Hi there, hello everyone. So let's discuss the type of cross-site scripting attacks, types of XSS. So the first one is the reflected XSS one. The second one is stored cross-site scripting, and the third one is DOM XSS. So in this video we are discussing the reflected XSS itself. Okay, all right. So reflected XSS, also known as non-persistent XSS, non-persistent XSS. So basically what happens actually, so the attacker injects the payload in the URL itself. So actually what happens, so in an HTTP request, the attacker injects payload in URL itself. Suppose the URL is www.target.com with some parameter, suppose test, and here attacker have injected the payload like script alert, okay, and the script closing tab. Okay, so what happens actually, the application treats or process the value of this tag in an unsafe way, and it is reflected in the response. Okay, so it is basically reflecting in the response without any filter or without any prevention. So what happens actually, the payload just got execute, and the payload has the ability to again hijacks the victim details. Okay, so now it depends on the scenario which details we are able to hijack or not. Okay, and also it is called non-persistent because it is not stored in the database. So whenever you send the link to the victim, then it works. Okay, so it just doesn't store permanently in the target. Okay, so let's see the scenario how it works basically. So all right, so suppose here is the target link. Okay, so I will also show you in a live lab also. Okay, but firstly understand how it works. Okay, suppose there is a parameter called error. Okay, and in an error you have injected some text, suppose test 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so what happens actually, this value just got reflected somewhere in the HTML document or HTML DOM. Okay, suppose it is reflecting in the h1 tag itself. H1 tag itself, the value you are entering just reflecting somewhere. Okay, I am just taking a scenario, an example. There may be different possible scenarios and maybe more complex cases. Okay, and what happens actually, you just observe the value is just reflecting somewhere and you just think of entering some different thing like a malicious thing like payload. Okay, now you just have edited the payload to some more complex thing like a JavaScript payload. Okay, now you can see the payload is reflecting. Okay, then you have to check whether it is working or not. Okay, so you can try with different cases as well. Okay, so here is the basic case of reflected XSS. So it may be possible with other parameter as well, you have to observe from your end. Okay, so let's see the scenario what actually happens. So here is the attacker. So as an attacker we just find a reflected XSS, suppose www.target.com. Okay, and here attacker injects a payload in some parameter, suppose test is the parameter, and here attackers build a payload. Okay, suppose here is the payload. Okay, so I have already told about this payload and alert document.cookies. Okay, so we will see this in real practice also. So what happens actually, and this becomes a payload itself of reflected XSS. Now what happens actually, attacker send this to some victim. Okay, so here is the victim. So whenever victim processes this payload, it got triggered, and again the details are sent to attacker. Details are sent to attacker. So this is how it works. Okay, so I have prepared a bit little code myself. Okay, so here is the previous code we are learning in the JavaScript, basic JavaScript thing. Okay, so I have written some manual code from my side. Okay, so here is the piece of code. Okay, So what I am actually doing, I am getting the header element from this code. Okay, so I am getting the header object. Okay, now what I am doing actually, so the value of the test parameter, okay, so you can read here, the value of test parameter from the URL, okay, is saved to the variable. Okay, it means the eh, basically the test object is saved to the parameter, and I have applied a simple if statement. If param has not having any value, then the text will be the same. Okay, the master the XSS, otherwise it is updated with the test value. So let's see what I am telling in the real practice. So here is the lab. Okay, let's see with console itself. Okay, so the output here console is showing is the previous output of this thing I have discussing in the tutorial. So let's see. So what actually happening here, so whenever I enter some value here, so it got reflected in this. Okay, so I have like set of from my side, like it will reflect here. Okay, like if we edit some value with params, okay, then it will be added as inner HTML in the header part. Okay, so reflected name itself suggests the something is reflecting in the response. Okay, so it tests for the test parameter. Otherwise, if I update the parameter, like if I change the parameter, like I have just set for the test parameter. If I change the parameter, then it will not work. Okay, so it is just working for the test parameter. Okay, yeah. Okay, so now again you have to just inject some payload here so that it will reflect here and run. Okay, so before testing the payload, you can just check for some basic thing, like let's check if is script is image tag working. Okay, you can check with other tags as well. Okay, so as you can see, the image tag is working. Okay, now as I already told you, and I have even commented here. Okay, so you can build a payload with image tag itself. Okay, so let's try with this. So I have to just apply a event listener. Okay, document.domain. So it is working. Okay, so this is how reflected exercise works. Now I can send this link to victim as well, and it will works. So however, I have built this locally, so it is working locally. Okay, so I hope you understand the basic reflected exercise through lab I have built from my own side. Okay, so let's now go for a live target. Okay, so I have taken my college website as a real target for one of the case. Okay, so let's go for it. Okay, so I am just putting random credentials. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I have already worked on it and I already know the observation. So you have to do things from your own side. Okay, so the basic observation you can see here. So you can stop video for 10 seconds and observe, like if you see anything here. Okay, you can stop the video for 10 seconds and observe. Okay, if you see any kind of observation here. Okay, so as you can see, the URL parameter message value is just directly reflecting here. Okay, it means if something from the URL parameter value is reflecting directly in the response, then one thing should come in your mind, that's the reflected XSS. Okay, but before directly going for reflected XSS, you can try for some other things as well. Suppose for just some different area of interest, you can try to embed some different HTML tags. Okay, sometime sometime in lot other cases, like sometime the cross-site scripting tags are often like blocked or secured, then you can often try for HTML injection as well. So I am covering that thing also. So I click here and let's see. Okay, so as you can see, it is working here. Okay, the tag I have just injected in the URL parameter value is directly reflecting in the response itself in the main login page. And here it is working, you can see below. If I click here, I think I will be redirected to bing.com. Okay, you can try with other tag as well, like iframe. Okay, so you have to give the source. So you can use this as your practice, okay, for your practicing. As you can see, the iframe tag is also working here, okay. Okay, so let's try to inject some JavaScript here. So there are more cases with reflected XSS. So I am showing you the basic and easy case. Okay, we will see the string escaping cases also, which are I think little bit complex and okay. Okay, so it is working fine. Okay, so even if you want to test for some other things, so you can also write for other commands as well. Okay, you already know the JavaScript is working. You can also check for like other things also, like consoling something, like checking XSS. Let's see if it is working. So it is working. Okay, so what an attacker can actually do, what are the actual impacts, we will see in account over takeover part. Okay, so this is not the actual impacts. The JavaScript is working, okay, it's fine. Okay, so alerting the, like, people just make an alert and just report to the program, so it is not sufficient and it is very insufficient. Okay, alerting thing is just a visualization or visual representation of any payload, but the actual impact of payload is the impact you are going to make with the victim. Okay, so we will see in the count takeover part. Okay, not for now. Okay, like what we can do here. Okay, at this stage with the victim, so we will see. So I think you understand how a reflected XSS basically looks like and how it works. So let's see more. So let's see a different case scenario here. Okay, so as you can see in the URL, there is nothing or there is no kind of parameter here. Okay, so I can test for, but here are some input parameters. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, let's input some different parameters here. Okay, and let's see. Okay, but now here is the case where you can see the now parameters are reflecting in the URL. Okay, but nowhere else in the response. But here you can see here the parameters are reflecting here itself. Okay, so now what you have to do, like in the previous it is easy to understand. Okay, like previously it was easy to observe, like the parameter value is reflecting. Okay, here is different case, the input parameter is reflecting. Okay, like not reflecting somewhere but reflecting in the parameter part itself. Okay, now what you have to do, you have to just inspect. Okay, now you can do automatic inspect. Yeah, so here is one thing you can see, the parameter value is reflecting in the input tag. Okay, in the value, like parameter value is the parameter and the value of value parameter is here. Okay, now like if I try to inject some basic payload here, like I am trying to inject a very basic payload. Let's see if it is work or not. Okay, so it is not working, so let's see. So but as you can see it is reflecting in the string. And keep one thing in mind, nothing will be processed in string, like everything will be considered as a string. It is not considered as a payload or any other thing. Like if I try to input any HTML tag, suppose I am injecting a HTML tag. So let's try to search. Okay, now again, so again it is reflecting on a string but not executing. Okay, but one thing you have to see or you have to do now, you have to escape or try to escape this string. Okay, so let me firstly escape the string and then I will like explain how we are able to escape the string and all. Okay, like you have to inject a payload in such a way that the payload balances the input tag and your payload just got executed separately. So it means you have to balance the string itself. So like you have to balance the string, so you can enter any random thing here. Okay, now balancing the string itself now. Okay, I will explain it separately as well. Okay, if you are understanding at this point, then it's good, then I will also explain separately in the paint. Okay, so you have to balance the string. like whenever this part entered here, it will balance the string, and now the leftover part you can try to inject your script. Like this is a basic step you have to do. Okay, let's see if it is executing or not. So it is not executing in this case also, because we have not balanced the string properly. As you can see here, this part is balanced. As you can see, this part is balanced, but also the script tag is separated, but still the, you can say, the suffix part, okay, is still not balanced. Okay, so now again building a payload, now again adding some random text. Okay, the first is balanced. Now we have to balance the last one also. Okay, so for this we are using string and some random text. Let's see now, still there is something. Okay, so we have to check. Okay, so still it is not working because we haven't closed the input tag. Okay, so don't be confused at this point. Okay, I will explain separately. Okay, so this will balance the string and this will close the input tag. Okay, now the input tag will be closed and I have to now enter the payload. Okay, now I can easily inject the payload. Okay, one more thing, try to execute document or domain every time, not alert. I will explain you why. And firstly, let us understand this. Okay, okay, so at this point we have balanced the string, and here is the closing tag which will close the input tag, and here our payload executes separately, and it will work fine. But for more better payload you can balance the prefix part also. Okay, the string as well, but let's see if it is working. Okay, now try to reload again. Okay, so I haven't closed the script tag, so let's see. Okay, so it is working because I haven't closed the script tag. Okay, so actually how it works, so let me come to very basic. So let's remove all of this. Okay, now just enter some test value. Okay, okay, so what was actually happening before, so it was like reflecting. Let me copy this and come to the paint. Okay, so here was the scenario what we have to do actually. So let me choose the pen pointer. Okay, so our value was reflecting here. Okay, suppose before I was entering test 1 2 3 4 5. So before I was entering here that it's a sample value. Now like if you have to inject some tag, okay, like a very basic script tag, alert 1 and closing script tag. Now if you enter here, then it will be considered a string and not be executed. So you have to separate this tag from this input tag. So how we can do, so let's just consider this value. Suppose here is the input tag with some other attributes. So here is the understanding part. Okay, so what you have to do actually, you have to firstly balance this string. So if you see it carefully, what I have done actually, so let's see in this way. Okay, so I am making a payload, like I have already entered some random text and I am just putting a string before in the payload. As you can see, I just entered the payload like this, like some random text. Suppose here is text, closing tag, then script, alert, then script closing tag. So how it works actually, so the string balances the text and string balances the value. Okay, so here is the payload. So let me choose the red one. for the payload. Okay, so here is the payload, basically the starting part of payload. So this will balance the string. Now I am adding a closing tag. Okay, as here I mentioned, I am adding a closing tag. Now what happens actually? It balances the input tag. Now input tag is balanced. Now whatever value I will add after will be considered a payload. So anything I can enter then. Like I have entered script tag here. You can try with another as well. Okay, alert one closing script. Okay, so that's why this payload got separated, or this is also known as string escaping. Okay, or HTML tag escaping. Okay, so if you didn't understand, let me explain again. So here was the case. Okay, our value was reflecting inside some parameter value. Now how to escape? You have to firstly check the string codes. If it is double quote, then you have to use double quote for escaping. If it is single quote, then you have to use single quote. Okay, so don't just directly choose payload from XSS cheat sheet. So understand manually, and you can escape manually as well. Okay, so even you can directly use this payload as well. Okay, so for better understanding, I have used a random text, but you can also use this. Okay, closing script. Okay, so again this will balance the value. String quotes will balance the string. Tag will balance the input tag. Now input tag is complete. Okay, now you can enter your payload. I think you understand. So let's see again. Okay, so here I just added some random text. Okay, and let's search again. You have to inspect. Actually you can't do randomly or blindly. You have to actually first analyze how it is reflecting. Again, go for the reflected part. Again it is reflecting here. Now what I will do, I have to like maintain the rules. I can't break the rules, so I have to balance the string. Okay, so string is already there, so I will just use a double quote. Okay, and double quote again will balance the string. Now I am using closing tag. This will complete the input tag again. Okay, now I can use anything. Like before I was using script tag, you can use image tag as well. Again, alert document dot domain. Okay, now the thing I was discussing before, like you have to use document dot domain every time instead of, like you have to use document dot domain. Like in alert, try to use every time document dot domain, not alert one. The main reason behind is because document dot domain directly gives you the domain where the payload is triggering. Okay, the affected domain. Sometime what happens actually nowadays, what is happening, I have analyzed a lot. Okay, the payload sometime like embedded in some other domain which is sandbox, and the domain is out of scope. So the document or domain will tell you the domain, and you can check whether it is in scope or out of scope. So firstly let's check whether it is working or not. So it is working, and you can see the domain is same as the target domain. So like it is working fine and we are in scope. Okay, so always try to use document or domain for checking the scope of the payload, where the payload is running. So let's see how payload got executed. Yeah, most of you will like see here the size thing will separated. That's because before the size part is like after the payload. Like again, let me explain you with the payload. So I have added random text with string quotes and closing tag. So here the string has balanced the string itself, and closing tag have completed the input tag. Now the payload after the closing tag have separated from the input tag and got executed separately. So that's how you can escape the strings. Okay, hope you understand the thing. Okay, so let's now observe the same things using Bob Suite. Okay, so those who are beginner to the course, okay, don't know anything about Bob Suite. So it is basically a proxifying tool you can manipulate the request, you can edit the request. Okay, so you can see more Bobsuit tutorials on the YouTube. Okay, for but for now you can see this and try to understand. Okay, so those who are intermediates, so they already know. Okay, so I am not explaining about Bobsuit. Okay, so but but you will understand easily. Okay, so let's see. So previously I haven't used Pubsud. I am just directly doing observation and directly doing things. Okay, so let's say using Pubsud. Okay, so now what you can do, just intercept the request. Okay, so what you can do, send to repeater. Okay, so using repeater you can again make a request to the target again and again. You can manipulate the request. Okay, so it is also used for backupping the requests. Okay, so let's send the request. Okay, now how can you check for reflected parameter? Just the value you have entered in the parameter value, you can just send the request and you will get a response. Now in response, check where the value is reflecting and how. Okay, so it is reflecting in just one space. Okay, so you can see here in between the div tag. Okay, now you can enter or you can try to enter the payload here. Okay, so let's try to enter some sample, very simple payload. Okay, so I have just entered test. Okay, so it is reflecting here in between. It means the h1 tag is executing. As you can see, it is highlighted. Okay, now you can try to enter payload. Like, okay, one more thing, as you can see, here you have to cover the space as well. Okay, so you have to use %20 as a URL encoding for space. Okay, because it will be considered as an error request. Okay, so by default browser does it, but here we have to do it manually. Okay, again try to use document.domain. So here it is clear that it will execute in the target itself, but still you have to use this. Okay, okay, now you have to check for the image tag where it is reflecting. Okay, so you can try to search image tag as well. Okay, okay, that is okay. So there are 5 matches. Okay, so you have to like find where is the payload executed. So try to check for different one. Okay, so here is our payload and it is executing successfully. Okay, so you can like copy URL and check in browser as itself. Okay, so here the payload is working successfully. Okay, on error. Okay, so even you can modify the payload here as well. Okay, so I think here is some issue, so I have to complete the payload now. Okay, yeah, it is working. So I haven't typed X in the source. Okay, yeah, it is working. Okay, so this is how you can do using burp suite. Okay, so let's check another similar case using burp suite. Okay, now here I just entering some random value in the input parameter, search code, course code. Again intercept the request. Okay, so here is the request itself, so send it to repeater. Even you can check in response in running. Okay, so here I have entered test 123. Yeah, so it is reflecting here as you can see in the input parameter. Okay, so it is working or reflecting fine. So now test using repeater. So as you can see here, the value, any value I enter will be entered or get reflecting in the string. Okay, even I enter any script tag. Okay, So payload should be correct. So in browser we have already seen the payload wasn't working. Okay, even you can just copy the payload here and check in the response. Okay, so you can even check from copy URL thing and try to see if it is working or not. Now we already know it will not work because it is reflecting in the string. Okay, and the string doesn't execute, we know. So we have to basically escape the string. Okay, so how we will escape? Firstly, you have to balance the string. So you have to balance the string, and the string are in double quotes. So you have to keep double quotes. Okay. Now the string is balanced. Okay. If the value is empty, so not an issue. You can give any random text, but okay, let's see for empty value as well. Now you have to close the input tag. So we will complete the input tag now. We have completed the input tag now. The input tag is completed now. Now we have uh, escaped the string successfully, and now we will inject our code. Okay, so I have already written here. Okay, so let's see. So if you observe here, then the input tag is completed. Okay, so the value is empty because I haven't given any value. You can give any value as well. Suppose I am giving any value, test. Let's send again. As you can see, the value is test is considered as a value in the parameter, and the closing tag will complete the input tag. Okay, then after the script tag I have given is escaped and successfully executed. Okay, and it is remained as such. The another part for the input remained as such. Okay, so one thing you can also do, you can like give comment. Let's see if it is work or not. Yeah, you can also give comment after it. Okay, so the another statement after the payload will be commented, or it will not execute, because sometime it will give errors or some difficulties in payload making. Okay, so the payload is working fine. So let's copy the URL and let's see if it is working or not. Yeah, it is working successfully. So you can try with different payloads as well. I have used script tag. You can use image one. Okay, so you already know how to make. You have to give an image tag with, again, here the for the space you have to give a URL encoded character like %20, and give a false source which will definitely produce an error. Now for error I have made a event listener on error. Okay, and alert will give a normal pop-up. So let's see if it is working. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, the string has balanced, the closing code closing code has balanced the input, and our payload is executed successfully here. Okay, so using Bubsert makes you more flexible. Okay, and provides you good analysis. So if you practice in Bubsert, you will get a better output. Okay, but if you get more perfect in this, so you can directly do in browser. Okay, so I definitely suggest you to use repeater. Okay, so let's see whether the payload is working or not. Yeah, so it is also working fine. Okay, so I have tested for this parameter, so let's test for this parameter also. Okay, okay, so let's intercept the request. Again, you can see the another input parameter value is again reflecting in the URL. Now you have to check whether it is working or not. Again, same process, similar process. Yeah, so we find a one match there, and it is again uh, okay, so let me make it more broad. Yeah, again it is reflecting in the input tag, and you have to just already analyze how to escape this type of character, and you can just first balance the string, close the input tag, and okay, so the value should be in string itself. Okay, So you can give any value or you can make it empty as well. So now you just give your payload alert. Okay, alert, or let me give some other thing like console, or you can give print. Okay, let us give another payload now. Just be flexible with different payloads, not just stick to one payload. Okay, test. Okay, let's see if it is working. Okay, okay, so here are some spelling issue. Yeah, so as you can see, script tag is working fine, and our payload will be definitely executed. And again, I have balanced the input tag. Okay, so let's copy URL. Again, it is working fine and the payload got executed. Okay, so using burp suite you can do it this way. So let's see more things with burp suite. Okay, so in HTTP or in the proxy part you have HTTP history. Okay, so as we already know, the parameter or payload is entered in the parameters. Okay, so it means the parameters requests are interesting requests, or the you have to focus on that type of request. So what you can do, you can just filter out the param request. So here are all the parameters requests. Okay, now all the requests containing parameters you can separate out and check it manually. Okay, so that's the thing.